Hey, it's Clay. Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to another video. I decided I'm going to do a build report on this parts caster. I've done some videos in the past, and I did film like little mini vlogs or updates on the progress of this build, but I don't exactly know if that's useful information. It tends to be really long, and it's difficult to like distill down. I mean, you build a guitar over the course of weeks or even a month. And so I'm just not exactly sure how to present that information. So I thought we'll try this. We'll try doing like a build report where I'll go through each step along the way and kind of give a little synopsis. I'll have clips on my channel as well, audio clips if you just want to hear how the guitar sounds. But if you're interested in building guitars or you know about that, maybe this will be interesting to you or helpful to explain the process. So this guitar was kind of a mixture of a few things. The inspiration actually came from Troy Grady. He has some videos on YouTube where he does some really cool animation explaining some technical things. But he has a couple of like little instructional videos where he has this old, I think it's like a actual vintage Mustang, and he's just like shredding like crazy on it. And I just thought it was really cool to take the guitar like this. I've always kind of liked Mustangs, but like real, legitimate, authentic Mustangs always had a number of problems that I really wasn't that hip to. The pickups always sounded kind of thin and weak. The bridges were always a little weird. The short scale and all that stuff. So anyways, to see him doing some really cool stuff on this guitar, it just looked really neat. I liked the aesthetic of it. And I wanted to add something a little different to the arsenal. I've got a couple Tellys, a couple Strats, and so a Mustang seemed to kind of take me in a different direction. Also, I had these two pickups laying in the drawer, and I've been getting a little bit more experimental with my finishing techniques, so I wanted to give this one a shot as well to practice. So, let's talk about the parts. Started off with this body. I got this body off of eBay. It's a pine body, vintage Mustang spec. I got it for like $30, so $35. Really, really cheap. And yeah, I mean, it's a cheap Mustang body. I'll get into that a little bit more later, but I thought it would be a good thing to experiment with my finishing on something a little bit more cheap as I get better at doing nitro finishes. We'll get more into that later. The neck is from Warmoth. I tend to be really, really picky about necks, so I figured if I get like a really cheap, crappy, stinky neck, I'm not gonna like the guitar, so I might as well do it right. And I got a Warmoth neck that I love. This is a Mustang style. It's a 24-inch scale, so a short scale. It's got 6105 stainless steel frets. It's got the fatback profile that I love. It's got the compound radius, maple, and Indian rosewood. It's got the little micro adjust here. I really love these Warmoth necks. I think they're fantastic. And I've got a couple others, and I think they're great. Just a really big fan of all the customization and options. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If you are somebody that wants kind of a customized spec, or you want something that you can't get on like a Fender guitar, then Warmoth is the place to go. You know, like my Goncalo Alves Paduic neck is from there. This one is from there. I mean, you can't find a fatback Mustang neck anywhere else. So, the pickups are DiMarzio. We've got a Virtual Solo and a Chopper, I believe. The most of the hardware is kind of from all over the place. In an effort to try to alleviate some of the bridge problems, I actually went and got a Wilkinson roller bridge designed for a Les Paul. And I'll get into more of that later. But I thought the idea here was that I wanted something that would be really, really smooth for the tremolo. This is an authentic Mustang tailpiece and control plate. I've decided to go with a master volume with treble bleed. And then I actually don't have a three-way because I forgot to order one. So in the meantime, I've just got an on-on SPDT switch, which is literally just switching between either neck or bridge. No in-between position. And then an output jack. I really didn't want to have the little sliding switches here. I never really liked that. So this type of a setup works really well for me. And then we've got some Wilkinson Easy Lock tuners. And I really like them so far. Bone nut. I think that's about it. Okay, so let's get into the build report. So I start with the body, and the finishing of the body went pretty well. Okay, so with the build, I started with the body. I ordered it off eBay. It needed a fair amount of sanding. With sanding, you just kind of step your way up. So I started at about 100 and just bumped my way up. 150, 220, 330, 400. And then I think did one more pass with like 1,000 or something. Just to try to smooth it out as much as I could. And could have done a little better job, but I do kind of like to see a little bit of stuff shining through. But if you want to get like that really pristine glass look, you need to spend some significant time with the sanding, really getting that perfect. I went from there into the sanded sealer from Re-Ranch that I had remaining left over from my previous build. 2 coats of sanded sealer, just some very, very light sanding, like just a very light minor pass with 400 grit to smooth out anything. But I found that if I take my time and try to be consistent with my technique and get in a good location to spray and all that jazz, then it isn't a big deal. From the sanded sealer, I went to the white primer just to give it a nice base. I wasn't as complete with the primer as I was in the past because I wanted this finish to be a little bit thinner just for experiment's sake, so I only actually did 2 coats of white primer, but that seemed to be fine. For the paint, I sourced this locally. I went to a local shop and I actually got like it's called Desert Orange all-purpose spray paint. And so, yeah, kind of wanted to see how I could do with some of these more locally things. The Re-Ranch stuff is nice, but it is a little bit expensive, especially if you're doing one little, because I think they ship in like $12.95 is like the flat shipping rate. I like this. I think the paint worked really nicely. I only had to do a couple of coats. It took on really well. It didn't get all messed up when I put the nitro over top, so it worked really nicely. And then I actually got off Amazon a can of Balin spray rattle can instrument finish, which is nitrocellulose lacquer, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great product to work with. I'd highly recommend it. It was pretty affordable and it worked really nicely. So good stuff there. Probably could have been a little more patient. Got a little bit of orange peel. This isn't just glassy smooth, but that's all right. I'm still getting better, and I'm not necessarily the most keen on like the nicest looking finish. You know, I want to do a good job, obviously, but I am not one to really sweat the details, and I actually was really happy with how this one turned out. I did not grain fill, so you can see little waves, and like there's a knot back here, which I really like, that you can see some of that personality through. And yeah, that was pretty good. The neck, I had some tinted amber satin nitro from Re-Ranch left over, and I used that. I actually ran out, so I had to finish it with that Balin's. So it is a little bit streaky because the tinted stuff, and then I finished it with non-tinted stuff. But I'm kind of okay with that. Add some personality. So then, so the finishing part actually wasn't so bad. Then from there, this build got really hairy. This was probably one of the harder, more complicated, complex builds I've ever done. So one of the issues was that the body was, I think it's probably generally true, when you go for something that's a little bit cheaper and kind of more mysterious off of eBay, then you're going to run the risk of running into these types of issues. So, man, where to start? For starters, I couldn't fit the pickups and the control plate on. There wasn't enough room underneath this bridge pickup to fit the wires, and the little hole that feeds into the control cavity was extremely tiny, and I could not fit everything I needed to into that hole. So I took a drill and tried to, like widen out that cavity, and I actually ended up going through the back of the guitar, which was very sad. So there is a little hole here, which I will probably repair soonish. But yeah, that was sad. That took a lot of effort. Secondly, the neck pocket wasn't quite right. The neck pocket didn't come down far enough, and so when I tried to put the screws in, they were kind of slanting a little bit. And that wasn't any good, so I had to use my Dremel to route that out. That was tough. Then, this bridge that I picked, this Wilkinson roller bridge, has really thick posts, thicker than the standard one. So I had to open it up. But also the posts are so thick that they actually would sit on top of this control plate. And if you understand anything about bridges and how they work, a Gibson-style bridge is meant to go on a guitar that, so if the body is flat, the string angle is like this on a Gibson, because the bridges are higher and the necks have a little bit of a recessed angle. So to start with, this is a Gibson-style bridge, which is higher to begin with, and then it was sitting on top of this control plate. So the action was like, I could almost get a full finger underneath the strings. It was crazy, crazy high. So I actually had to take my Dremel and open up the holes in this tailpiece. And I also had to take the Dremel and open up the actual wood cavities for the studs or the bushings to go into. And that took a ton of time and effort and energy. It was really difficult to get all that working properly. I've also had to shim the neck a little bit as well to further help with that. But I've gotten the action really, really low as a result. So I think it was probably worth it. But if you are considering experimenting with a bridge like this, be aware that it might take a little bit of extra work. And on this one, this whole body was really just kind of an adventure for me. Took some risks with the bridge, and then just the way that it was routed wasn't quite right. So I had to do quite a lot of dremeling on this body to get everything to fit properly. But I've gotten to the point where it all works good. The only remaining issue I'm having is with the nut. My last guitar, I had a really heck of a time. I got a blank nut, and I chiseled it out myself. I looked up the calculations, and I don't know if I wasn't being precise enough, but I couldn't quite get the string spacing exactly right. So this time I got a pre-slotted nut, but it still isn't right. The nut itself fits into the neck width-wise perfectly. But the slots, where the slots were cut, are very narrow. So there's a little bit extra room on the edges of the strings, between the edge of the fretboard and the high and low E string. And I don't love that. It kind of makes it feel very cramped, because not only do you have the short scale this way, but then you have a very narrow feeling nut width, because the strings are especially narrow. I could have just potentially, maybe that's how this neck works. The nut width maybe is just more narrow than some of the other ones I'm used to, but I have been comparing with other guitars, other Strats that I've got, and it just feels very narrow. So I'm gonna need to work on that. And the strings do seem to be shifted a little bit off. If you look at the dots here, this D string is actually slightly over this first dot, but then on the G string there's a little bit of room. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with this nut, but I may need to redo it. But it does leave things feeling a little bit cramped. So yeah, that was kind of the build in a nutshell. It was an adventure. It took a ton of work, but I'm pretty happy with it now. And now that I've got a chance to play it a little bit, tonight was the first time that I had it kind of up and running, and really enjoying it. The short scale is actually a lot of fun. It feels very, very zippy. I've got the action very low, and it just feels very fast to play on. Everything's a little bit closer together. You don't have to stretch quite as much. It just feels very compact, kind of like a sports car. I haven't glued in the nut yet either. So when I bend, it shifts the nut, which is kind of funny. So overall though, I'm pretty happy with it. It's an interesting sounding guitar as well. I have some very modern pickups, and I really am enjoying this pickup. I think it's going to be nice and fat and strong sounding. Now the neck pickup is a little interesting. I don't know if it's because of the shorter scale, or because it seems to be positioned a little bit closer to the bridge, but to my ear, it almost sounds more like the middle pickup on a Strat than the neck pickup. You know, the neck pickup has that very smoky, round, you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan type, you know, really warm, kind of, you think like the opening line of Electric Gypsy from Andy Timmons. That type of sound. This pickup has a little bit more honk to it, kind of like a middle pickup, which I'm not so used to. Now, this is a virtual solo, which is a little bit of an interesting choice for a neck position. I think it typically would be go with a Stratocaster with vintage neck, middle, and then a little bit hotter bridge pickup. But, you know, I'm going to give it a shot. I had it sitting in my drawer, and I wanted to test it out. So, yeah, I'm hoping that this guitar could be pretty cool. Like I said, once the parts seem to kind of meld together, I'm really eager to hear how it sounds. And, you know, I think it's going to be a neat addition to the collection. So, if you have any questions, please let me know. If you have any thoughts about whether or not I should post all those videos, let me know as well. I'd be curious to know your thoughts. And, yeah, see you guys again soon. Bye.